And the next game. So obviously pretty standard flat. As opposed to trying to make some sort of play, we do have to give up on paired boards sometimes, and when an over is going to come on the turn, most of the time, which will give him license to barrel again, or an over to the fives is going to come on the turn. The majority of the time, it's just good for us to give up in spots where he would be correct to double barrel a lot. When scare cards can come, and things of that nature. And we just have nothing, so don't really like bluffing there to rep the ace. We don't flat that many fives. So here he checks back the flop, which puts him on, I don't know, some aces, I guess some kings, also probably some sixes. So we just bet the king turn to fold out his aces and any sixes that he might have checked back. Bottom pair, even a really weak second pair could be checkbacks. So, but when we get raised, we just give up. And here we could bet, and I do like to bet, just because I think he's prone to raise most of his top value hands on this flop, just because it's a really wet board. So when this turn, even though this turn is a blank, I think he's relatively capped on this turn, and we can rep any jack, any nine, whereas he has more eights, weak nines, draws, things of that nature. So we barrel turn, and then on the river we just don't elect to rep because he hits the straight a lot, and it does help his range. It gives them some two pairs, which we're not sure if we're folding up. So here again, we're taking a hand that's in our folding range, and just three bet bluffing it. It's not suited as opposed to a lot of the cases in the past, but we haven't 3-bet in quite a while, so we do get a fair bit of respect for it, and we can't flat the hand. So I do think that it's fine to do. Not that we're doing it all the time, but as opposed to folding. So here, when he leads, right, this is sort of a weird spot, but when he leads, I think he's really capped. When he leads flop, because he just has no incentive to lead really a king, a nine, any strong draw. We've been c-betting a lot. So it's just really hard to put him on a hand, so I just like to raise this turn, just to fold out, I guess, anything weird that he could have donked with. It just doesn't make sense for him to donk value, like very strong value. So we raise turn to just fold out any weaker hands that he might have opted to donk instead of to grab the initiative instead of playing them checking out of position and us firing barrels into him, which is never a fun spot. And also just random draws, turn draws, and just air to fold out. And then this river we hit our straight. Obviously ace 10 beats us, but we are just betting it for value, and he shoves and shows the turn straight. So he did donk a draw on the flop. And then he did take the weird line of just flatting it on the turn, but he's not really scared of any rivers, so So I guess that's fine, and we just sort of got lucky in that spot to also fill our straight. So they're pretty standard value 3-bet, and we're calling off any 4-bet, obviously. And here he does another weird sort of donking line, but I do like to fold because often on these sort of lower boards, these lower connected boards, you don't expect villain to c-bet that much. Like personally, I check back that sort of board a lot, so it makes sense to lead any weak value to try and get calls. And so we can just fold our overs and be happy quite easily, as opposed to trying to make some play. Here again, with the Queen 6 is sort of an interesting spot, I suppose. I'll pause and just show the board again. So he puts out his standard c-bet. I like to raise. Here I think we do fold out a ton of hands that have good equity against us and do beat us, sort of ace high, king high type stuff. I don't really expect him to be 3-betting that light because we haven't been check raising many flops at all in this session. And additionally, we do have the over to the jack, which is good, and we do have the backdoor flush draw. So we will be able to, barrel some turns and barrel some rivers if he does wind up calling when we do pick up equity. So just because of the game flow considerations that we haven't really made a play that is hard for him to hit paired boards. That I don't expect him to be rebluffing that often. That we can fold out better. It's just a hope that we can barrel off a lot, or at least sometimes. I think it's not really a bad spot to make a play here. And unfortunately, he does just raise. But I expect it to be value basically all the time. He really is polarized in this spot, and I don't expect him to be bluffing very much, and it makes no sense to like 3-bet an ace or something just because it's giving us extra value when we do have better, and it's just not folding out anything better. So here we flat. If it was like king 3 or king 2, we could consider 3-betting, especially suited hands, but this is pretty firmly in our flat range. So we're just calling and playing post, and when he checks back, we're just probing turn, which we do with our bluffs and our value in that spot. So here, I know he hasn't really 3-bet. Well, he did just 3-bet, but before that he hadn't 3-bet very much at all. So that might be a little loose, but we do have a blocker to any strong race X he might have. I would expect him to be jamming any like smaller pockets. So we just 4-bet to fold out hands that have like pretty good equity against us and would have the initiative post flop. But that we just fold out by 4-bet jamming. Yeah, I don't know how much there is to say about that spot. Yes, it is debatable, but I sort of do like 4-betting it. And in this spot, unfortunately, we just didn't bluff because the run out was sort of bad for us. With the 4 straight on board and all the low cards, he could sort of hero call something. So here, just a value 3-bet jam. He really doesn't have to be opening wide at all for us to be able to 3-bet jam profitably there. And his 65% at this depth, or 60% or whatever, is certainly enough to justify jamming. It's like there. We could check back and just check fold post, but we can't really just raise his limp, because when we get jammed on, we have to fold, and if we get flatted, then we're just playing terribly. We're just set mining, really. But we can just jam. He hasn't limped very much lately, so it's sort of unlikely for the first one to be a limp trap, just because even though in this session we have been, attacking his limps a fair amount, oftentimes when something hasn't been going on for a while, it will just be less, how to say, when something hasn't been going on for a while, he could limp a lot of sort of weak hands that, just to try and see flops, maybe our game plan has changed or something of that nature. And with our 2-2, even his weakest hands are going to have almost 50% equity against us post flop, so we just jam and take the blinds. And here, I just don't think anything worse is really going to be calling us on the river. I don't want to turn our 7 into a bluff on the turn, so we just check back turn and check back the river. Maybe we could have gone for some really thin value, but it's hard to see very many worse hands at all calling us. And he could be trapping something. Here, I don't know if I really love this float either, but I do elect to peel just because we have the 2 overs, and unless he has an ace, he's going to have a tough time really playing further. So I do check the turn to him, which I don't really love after floating flop if we're going to be taking this line, but I did that just so he would sort of give away that he was double barreling an ace, because he only double barrels some like 25% of the time, something like that. Alright, I want to talk about this spot, so I'll pause here for a sec. So he double barrels all of his aces in that previous spot, I think. The turn wasn't over, so he could also just barrel that with a lot of his air. So I do like checking to him, I guess, to let him, really define his range. If he double barrels, he should be pretty strong there, just given his tendency of not double barreling really ever. So even though the river there paired the board, we just led because we're folding out tons of his high card stuff and possibly low pair stuff that elected not to double barrel, and we'll just have a really hard time calling a decent sized river lead by us after we flat the flop. So we did, and we got the fold. Here, so this is a pretty interesting spot. We min raise, and he put in a 3-bet to T200, which he had been alternating sizings at this point, to this point in the video. Sometimes T180, sometimes T200. I don't really have reads on what he's 3-betting 2 different sizes, because I've seen value to 3x and value to 3.3x in the past. So what sort of goes into my thinking here as I think about it and then elect to 4-bet is that he's 3-bet some recently, but only once or twice really in this match. So I expect him to be 3-betting sort of wide as as if he thinks his bluffs will get a fair amount of respect. So that's one factor. Another factor is he can't really do very much after we 4-bet. We 4-bet him once, I believe, in this video so far, so our 4-bet should get a lot of respect. At this point, we've played 300 hands, or 250 hands against him, and he has only seen us 4-bet 4 times, and it has been value. I think he might have seen one when it was value in the past. So we should get a lot of respect, and the only hands that he can really be 3-betting and be happy 4-betting or 5-bet shoving here going to be real premiums. Even a hand like Ace Jack is going to have a hard time, happily sticking it in here, although he probably does. But it's just really hard for him to put us on a 4-bet bluff here, and he should be thinking that his 3-bets at this stage will get a lot of respect. And if he flats, which would be really weird, we get to play post with a suited hand and a connected hand, so it could be worse for us. But one that is not just going to be a flat to his 3-bet. Like if we had 8-9 suited or something, we could just flat it and play post, and we spike a lot of boards. 2-3 is obviously weaker for multiple reasons, so we can't just be flatting his 3-bet. So for all those reasons, I like to 4-bet bluff. Also just because I thought it might be cool to do. And we wind up getting a fold and feeling great about life and picking up 9s, which is a pretty standard 3-bet jam here. If we had a hand 10s, if we had jacks, I would be not alone 3-betting, but with 9s, I think we can just 3-bet shove so we're not in bad situations post. We wind up getting it in against 6s and holding, which is nice. So I think there are 1 to 2 more games. Could be wrong, but we'll see. Alright, so I like to c-bet here. This is a board that I'm checking back sometimes. In fact, a fair percentage of the time, but we've really not been c-betting very much, due mainly to bad boards in this session, but so we do like to bet, thinking that we'll get some respect, and also, it does have a queen, which is not bad for us. Here we elect to float with our ace. I've talked about some similar spots, just getting a lot of respect when we float these boards, and him not really barreling very much. So it's just sort of a float for us to get to showdown pretty easily. We wind up getting to showdown without putting another bet in. So this is another sort of loose open, which I think he's playing enough out of position and 3-betting enough that it's probably not the best. Pretty standard probe here after he checks back. And we'll be double barreling a lot there to wrap a lot of equity. And also to fold out any draws that he might have picked up on the turn that bust him over, because third club came. So he could call clubs, which we just barrel river and fold out a ton of the time. And here he just hasn't been check raising very much. I haven't seen him check raise light. Check raise flops light, and this extends to our past history before this video as well. So there's just no no making plays. You know, we want substantial equity to continue after he check raises the flop. In this spot, we could have attacked his limp, but this is a bit weaker than the other hands that we've been attacking his limps with, and it plays fine after just checking it back. I don't think we need to be, you know, doing something all the time. I think both options are viable in terms of attacking the limps and checking back. I also wanted to sort of show him that we weren't just attacking his limps with any two, and that we were capable of checking some back. And here I make a sort of loose float, but I think it's fine. We have two overs. We have the backdoor flush draw. We have the I mean, we do have backdoors to the straight as well. And here I elect to jam, just because I think it's really impossible. I mean, what can he have here besides the straight that is it's played like this to go over the action quickly. He 3-bets, we call, and then he barrels and barrels turn. So he barrels 100% on the flop after, or okay, 90% after 3-betting. And then when he barrels this turn, I just really had a hard time seeing him 3-betting like too many 10x combos. Really shouldn't be 3-betting 5x at all. Maybe, I mean, we saw him 3-bet Queen 3 suited before, but a hand like Queen 5 or King 5 suited, for example, is just going to flat too well to really justify 3-betting it. I don't expect him. It's not like he's 3-betting 40% or something at these depths. It's more around 25, so I don't expect him to be 3-betting those hands. I really expect him to be flatting most of flatting pre most anything that will have a straight here. Whereas if he barrels, you know, maybe he doesn't know that we realize this, and he can be turning a 6 or 7 into a bluff, or he could be betting, trying to bet for thin value with some sort of overpair, or he could just be bluffing with, you know, King Deuce suited or Queen Deuce suited or something. So I elect to stick it in. We do still have the 10 will give us the nuts, but it's not really like it's a pretty negligible in terms of equity. It's going to be 8%. So it's not nothing, but I just think we really fold out almost 100% of his range here. Like, even if he has 2 pair, like a set or something, he just didn't really consider us repping the straight. He'll just have real problems. And so we jam and he winds up folding. It's just about sort of his range composition. Like, he shouldn't have very many straights there at all, and he should have a lot of pairs and bluffs, and it's just great that we just fold all of it. So here, we fold out a lot of hands with good equity against us. Overs, maybe weak pairs, things like that. And we have the open-ender when we do get it in, so it's cool. So here he limps, obviously, standard attack, standard snap, and just a cooler. And I really wanted to, I guess it's not really that relevant in this spot, but it's part of the reason why I checked back the A6 was so we wouldn't have to deal with limp traps when you know, with strong value hands. But we've been attacking his limps pretty aggressively throughout the vast majority of this video, so I can't really blame him for that. Although again, I would rather have like a made equity hand. Just because when he jams, like the weakest ace we're really getting in there with is maybe like ace 9, ace 10, and then other than that, we're just getting in with pocket pairs. So here we elect to run a bluff. When he flats the flop, I just can't expect him to have that many strong straights or kings or even tens, just because he's going to be check raising. He check raises pure value for the most part, at least that I've seen. So he'll be check raising all that on this super wet board, this monotone. And so when he flats, I don't really know what he has, but it just feels like a good spot. Maybe that sounds sort of lazy, but it just feels like a good spot to triple barrel because he seems pretty capped and he can't have anything too strong. So he'll just have real problems calling down, even if he did elect to flat like a king when the fourth spade dropped on the turn. It's just not very easy for him to call a river bet. Ooh. I just realized that might have been out of the frame for a little. So here we flat. It's a little too deep for me to love 3-bet jamming. I don't really love 3-betting because when he 4-bets, I know he hasn't shown a tendency to 4-bet bluff. He's 4-bet me once, lifetime. We 3-bet him a lot. So I don't expect him to be 4-betting weaker aces, 4-betting like ace-6 or ace-5 or something. There's just going to be pairs and stronger aces, really. So it just is not a great spot to 3-bet. And here I do 4-bet for a similar reason to earlier, not with the deuce 3, but just because we block his ace-x. It's hard for him even to call with like a really weak pocket pair there, so he's going to have some stronger aces which we block, some pocket pairs, and a whole bunch of hands with a lot of equity against us. Middling hands or even 3-bet bluffs that play decently against us. We just avoid that situation by jamming. Also, our ace-x was suited, so we have the extra flush equity, which is actually pretty substantial when if you look at the math and look at the ranges. It's going to play multiple percent better getting it in. Otherwise, we flat and we have a weak ace and he has the initiative. That's not a very fun situation. So here, just continuing the aggression. King Deuce we could flat, but it's really sort of the bottom of our range. It doesn't have great expectation. And he's still been, throughout this video, folding to a lot of our 3-bets. So we can and not 4-betting at all. So we just 3-bet it. Get a lot of folds. And here at 30, we can just jam this. It's not like at 45 with the ace-9. At 30, jamming is just going to be better. So yeah, just some standard hands here. Guess the problem with this sort of video is that there's some some dead time like this. But we are just about wrapped up. Okay, I flopped the nuts here. Like to just flat. Give him an opportunity to barrel on a lot of turns and rivers. But this turn is really just shutting down all the action. So we just check to give him a chance to catch up on the river, and then lead river to try and fish calls out of anything, really. So he's folded to most of our check raises. So I'm inclined not to check raise my top value hands there, and just, even though he hasn't barreled that much, just give him opportunities to barrel. I think we'll do better because, you know, if he makes a play, if he 3-bets, for example, he's going to have value anyway, so he'll probably just have a hand that he would barrel with anyway. Just give him a chance to continue with his bluffs. I'm still talking about that spot because these spots have been pretty standard. Obvious min-raise call, and we flip great. Alright, so that is the last match. As you can see, we flip pretty well. And I don't know. I guess to recap, you know, what we want to do when we're approaching a reg match, or, you know, any set of matches against a reg at these levels, if we're playing them long term, you know, we really do want to be going over our notes, keeping actual notes, you know, not just relying on the HUD numbers, but also going over our notes and our big hands and our HUD stats, just going into the sessions, just so we're on top of things, so we're focused, so we know, you know, what sort of things we're trying to accomplish when we're playing them. Additionally, we want to pay more attention to game flow than versus fish. You know, sometimes versus fish, if they lose a big pot, they might spaz out or something. That sort of thing is less prone to happen against a reg, but, you know, there are spots in our matches where I've said, you know, oh, we haven't, you know, 3-bet in a while, so we're probably going to get some respect, and even though this hand is sort of a marginal 3-bet, you know, because of game flow reasons, it could be a better 3-bet or a worse 3-bet. And we're also more inclined to balancing some of our ranges somewhat, so we just don't want to really be in a spot. You could see at the end of the video, there were some spots where it was just really hard for him to have anything, and or anything that was, you know, comfortable calling or continuing to more action. So we sort of punish that by raising, even if we just had air, or by turning some hands into bluffs. So we don't want to make ourselves too easy to play against in terms of ranges. It's a lot more about the sort of range v range ideas than about just playing complete maximal EV with your given holding. So you have these meta considerations, and you know that your opponent won't just be, you know, spewing off all over the place, and that they'll have some, you know, at least rationale for what they're doing, whether it's correct or not. So it's about trying to understand them and get into their heads, things of that nature. So I think that just about wraps it up. I don't know if this will be one video or cut up into two or whatever, but I have been Don Slanas, and I hope you guys have enjoyed and gotten something out of this video. I would appreciate any questions, comments, would be great. So, yeah, I look forward to chatting with you guys, and I hope you all have enjoyed. Thanks.